Welcome to a Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez here alongside in our Florida studios, Ashley Nicole Moss, and on location in Boston for the finals, our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And Bill, I understand not only were you there last night, but you also ran into soccer royalty. You had I think you're best friends with Pep Guardiola now, right?
Yes. You'll be shocked to hear I had the most awkward interaction with the most famous manager probably on earth. So Pep is the Man City manager, used to be the Barcelona manager, Barcelona legend. Half the time we did the show, I'm wearing a Barca jersey, right? So I knew he was there. I'd missed him at media day. He was hanging out. I was in the other room. I'm walking through the floor of the garden. I'm trying to get to my seat. The NBA gave me nice seats. Thank you, NBA. But you have to kind of go through the crowd. And I got shoved, and I turned, and just like me to you all, a foot was Pep Guardiola. And I didn't know what to do, so I go, Pep! And he looks over, and I go, Visca Barca, which in Catalan means, and he just kind of gave me a dazed, what are you saying? And then I got pushed from behind, and we kept it moving. But it felt magical. It felt magical.
Okay. Well, it felt magical for you, Bill, and that's all that matters.
That's right.
That's right. Pep's never going to forget it. Maybe you'll reconnect for game 2. Maybe he'll be there for that. I know that he and Joe Mazzulla had sort of like had a jersey exchange, and Joe Mazzulla had gone over there. I wonder if Pep watches the town 4 times a week like Joe Mazzulla does. But that's something you can ask him, Bill. Next time, Ashley's shaking her head. It's good.
Nice
you should ask
conversation starter next time. I like it.
Yeah, that's the one. All right, later in the show, Adam Silver did his annual pre-finals press conference. We'll discuss that. He talked about expansion and potentially losing inside the NBA. Doris Burke made history last night. We'll get into that. And we'll also do previews and predictions for game 2. But first, game 1, Celtics rolled 107-89. They hadn't played in 9 days, gang. Didn't matter. They held the Mavs to the fewest points that they had amassed in a single game during this postseason. They were up as many as 29 points. Mavs cut it to 8 in the third. I thought that they were going to get back into it, and then the Celtics decided to press the gas pedal again, and off they went. Bill, you were there. They looked really good.
Yeah, is it too late to change my Mavs in 5 to Celtics in 3 with a white flag component that just
shouldn't have went Mavs in 5 to begin with?
Into game. Yeah. It was. So do you know sometimes when you think you know the excellence of a team or an individual, but then you see them in person for the first time and it's different? That happened with me with Shohei Ohtani. It happened with Tiger Woods. It happened with Leo Messi. It happened with LeBron James when I was a young reporter. And it happened with this Celtics team last night because I've not been around them much this year. They were, as you saw on TV, they were utterly and totally dominant. And you're right, John. I thought the Mavs were going to come back. I thought they were going to take a 29-point deficit and turn it into this incredible comeback. And then Kyrie missed a wide-open three-point shot, a relatively open three-point shot that would have cut it to 6. And just the Celtics never, ever looked back. And I know we've talked about this, but to see with my own eyes, the defensive excellence of that Celtics team and the fact that they'll just basically go, especially with Horford's off the floor, any of those guys against any of those Mavs and shut down everybody not named Luka. And I know we'll get into this a little bit, what it meant for Luka. It was a thing to behold. It's a long series. I'm not going to lose track of the fact that teams have gone down 1-0, 2-0 in years past and won. We can overreact sometimes. But, man, Boston looks like they are everything on paper in real life as well. That was a beatdown.
Yeah, I mean, going into the series, I obviously picked the Mavericks in 7, but I picked Boston to win game 1. Now, I didn't think it was going to be in the fashion that they did it, but we can talk about the Mavericks, and outside of the Timberwolves, they haven't really been a good game 1 team. So I don't think a leopard changes its spots that much in the span of a 6-7 game series. The Celtics just looked really, really comfortable, and I think that really stuck out to me was the Mavericks looked uncomfortable. They also looked just unsure of what they were doing on the court as a unit. And you can talk about Luka, and we will later on in the show. But for me, that was the biggest thing that I took away. There were a lot of moments of confusion. And when we talked about this series, and we kind of talked about the pros and the cons and the differences going into this series, one of the things I said, especially in game 1, that you can expect to see is you have to remember this is not a team that's very experienced at this position. Yes, Kyrie's won a championship before. It's been a long time since he's been to the finals. Luka is just an anomaly, but the rest of the supporting cast of the Dallas Mavericks has no idea what it's like to play in this kind of environment for this type of series, for these types of games. And you saw that. There were moments where it looked like they were starting to figure it out, to Bill's point, But overall, it just looked like a team that kind of bit off more than they can chew. But I do think we're going to see a drastically different Mavericks team in game 2. This is not who they are as a team, and they got here for a reason. This was just a very bad first impression into the NBA Finals.
Yeah, the game 1 thing is an interesting point. For sure, they haven't really acquitted themselves well in most game 1s so far, and yet they've overcome that. I think they got a math problem here, though, because the three-point shooting last night was exactly what we expected from the Boston Celtics. They took 42. That is right in their sweet spot. They love to jack up as many threes as possible, and they hit 38%. And then conversely, the Mavs only took 27, and they only made 7. And before the series started, Jason Kidd was saying, hey, if this is a series where the team that makes the most two-pointers wins, we're in good shape. Well, okay, good luck with that math, because they can hit 33% of their threes. You got to hit 50% of your twos just to keep up. And last night they couldn't keep up. And like as Bill said too, defensively they can throw so many different looks at the Mavericks, and the Mavericks don't have that in reverse. I know it's just one game. I know that we sometimes overreact, but I do not like the matchup here. If you're the Mavericks,
you're right. I'll just say this, because they took I think 15 threes in the first quarter, and they hit a whole bunch of them. And they had a great first half. They made I think 42 or 43% of their threes in the first half, and they came out of the gate I think 1 of 5 or 1 of 6, and that was part of the reason Dallas was able to cut it. There will be regressions to means. So for me, I'm 100% with you, John. And I think to add to your point, on top of the math problem, is the fact that when the math, at least for a brief moment in the third quarter, helped out the Mavs a little bit, when Boston came back to earth a little bit statistically, nobody other than Luka Doncic showed up to help. So if you're going to have this inherent disadvantage and Boston takes a lot of threes, you've got to have multiple players who are contributing, getting, if it's twos, easy twos, and nothing was easy for Dallas. And if they can't take advantage of the moments where the Boston's approach, which is a lot of threes, is just going to naturally swing to some missed shots, it's Boston in 3.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this game, right, Boston, an excellent three-point shooting team, but the Dallas Mavericks can go ahead and shoot threes. We have seen that throughout the course of the season. We've seen that in the postseason. But to both of your points, it can't just be Luka. Kyrie was a non-factor. Obviously, we'll dive into that deeper in the show. He was missing wide-open shots, which is just so uncharacteristic for Kyrie Irving. And what happened also, one thing that I took away, and we can talk more in depth when we talk about Luka, the Celtics were really able to go ahead and make him one-dimensional in the sense that they took away his ability to assist and help move that basketball, and that just completely derailed the offense, on top of the fact that Kyrie Irving was non-existent. Also, when you talk about what the Boston Celtics were doing, I mean, they had 7 players with multiple three-point shot attempts and actually making those. I don't think we'll get that type of performance from the Boston Celtics again. Obviously, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, you already know what they can do when it comes to the three ball, but 7 players with multiple three-pointers, not only attempted, but made, is a little bit of an anomaly, and I do think that 3 percentage will maybe even out a little bit. It may drop down as the series progresses. You can't shoot like that for 5, 6, 7 games straight. That's not how that works.
Can I lump out one more dire fact? I think it's amazing for Dallas, if we're just going to stack all the reasons that the Mavs are in deep trouble. Jason Tatum wasn't very good last night. He wasn't. He did not shoot particularly well. It did not matter.
Porzingis was.
There are 5. Porzingis was great. There are 5. This is
we got to get into Porzingis too.
I looked it up. There were 5 times in this postseason, including last night, when Jason Tatum has shot below 40% from the field. So that's an abysmal shooting night, and Boston is 5-0 in all of those games. Like, the debate about whether it's Tatum or not, and we can have it, maybe it doesn't even matter. I'm not even sure it matters if he's the best or third best or fourth best player on any given night, because he did other things, but offensively he wasn't great, and it wasn't even remotely significant. That is a problem for Dallas too.
It is a problem for Dallas. He wasn't that great last night. He had 6 turnovers last night. I thought he played his defense was good last night, but yes, the turnover problem continues to be an issue for him. But I don't think it matters whether or not he's shooting well or not shooting well, because we've seen how deep the Boston Celtics are, and we haven't even gotten into Kristaps yet, and we will get there. But to Ashley's point about like the shooting evening out, they might not make their threes. That's been a problem for them. When they're beatable, they don't make their threes, but they're going to continue to take a ton of threes.
Of course, absolutely.
That's what they do.
That's their game. Yeah,
and I think and so that's why I kind of shrugged a little bit because, okay, they might not shoot as well as they did last night. They might not come out absolutely on fire as they did in the first quarter. But there's, as you mentioned, Ash, there's 7 guys who hit threes last night. They have so many. If one of them goes cold, they got 6 more. If 2 of them go cold, they got 5 more. You need all of them or the majority of them to go cold. And I just think over the course of a 7-game series, that's a tall order for the Mavs. I don't know what they do here because you guys mentioned Luka was there. He showed up last night. Mm-hmm. Nobody else did. Kyrie was bad last night. Again, 12 points on 19 shots.
I mean, I take a few things into this, right? Again, going back to my point, and listen, at the end of the day, these are professional basketball players, so it's not an excuse, but experience does matter, especially straight out the gate. And like I said, you can kind of see the confusion on a lot of the guys on the Mavericks side throughout the course of the game. And even Jason Kidd at halftime, I believe, when they had, the cameras in the locker room, he said, it's just basketball. You guys are treating this a little bit too complex. We do this. We've played basketball this entire season. Just go out there and play your game. And that's the concept of the lights being a little bit too bright and sometimes the moment being big, because there were parts of the game where you saw the Mavs start to kind of figure it out as a unit. It just obviously wasn't enough, but they didn't look as abysmal as they did in that first half. In various moments in the second half, you started to see glimmers of the team that got this far. I believe wholeheartedly that we are not going to get this version of the Dallas Mavericks in Game 2. The adjustments will be made. Kyrie Irving's going to show up. The jitters, whatever it is that guys were feeling, the guys who have never been in this position have come and gone. This is not going to be this version of the Dallas Mavericks in Game 2. We're going to get a much more competitive series as it progresses. This was just a bad first showing, and you had to kind of get this game out of the way. I'm not getting too high or too low on this one.
Ash, you're right. And I think there's reason to give a little grace to the players not named Luka and Kyrie, role players in their first NBA Finals on the road in the Boston Garden. Okay, that's a difficult task, and that Denver defense is really, really good, so you've got to learn how to navigate that. No excuse for Kyrie Irving.
No excuse. I mean, it's been 7 years, though.
No excuse. He shrunk. He was rattled.
Yep.
I don't know if this came across on TV, but I spent a lot of the game just watching him. He was remarkably passive and looked just unsure and insecure on the basketball floor. I can't remember the last time that was true. And I don't think it was just that defense. I think it was the weight of being back in Boston. You've got to have Kyrie Irving, and not just back in Dallas, at least obviously one time in Boston, and they need him more than one time, to play like Kyrie Irving if this team's going to have any chance. And you can't ask young guys or guys that haven't been in this position before in the Dallas Mavericks to conduct themselves with some poise and some confidence if Kyrie Irving's over there playing like a scared 13-year-old kid.
Do you really think that he was shaken being back in the TD Garden? I don't know if I
100%.
I don't know if
yes.
I think more for me, it may have leaned more to the side of, it's been, 7 years since he's last been to the finals?
He's lost 14 straight there. Right? Is that the number?
Sometimes
11 in a row.
There may be something about necessarily playing there. He may not enjoy it. It may just not be, the aura, the energy may not align with him. I don't know, but I don't know if I would relate it to him being shook by being back in Boston. I mean, he's already gone back to Boston as a former Boston Celtic multiple times during his tenure with the Brooklyn Nets. So if it was any of that but if it was any of that kind of like anxiousness about returning to a franchise that dislikes you, I would feel like that went out the window the first time, second time, third time he went as a Brooklyn Net. You already know what to expect walking in there. It shouldn't have been a surprise.
You should know. So I'll quote Dan Roach, who's our CBS Boston colleague, who I was doing some HQ hits with. I thought Kyrie was going to be amazing. To your point, Ash, I thought all the points you made, I made pregame and said he's going to be great. And Dan's point, and Dan covers the team every day, I was wrong, he was right, was Kyrie has dodged this spot when he could have with the Nets at times. He hasn't been able to win here. And he said, and I haven't covered Kyrie every day, as someone who covered him every day, he thought that he would not be able to handle it. I think there's an absolute correlation. But maybe if there's not great for Dallas, Kyrie's got to show up. No more excuses. You got to play at a high level, whatever the reason.
He did not show up last night. He did not look good. Also, afterwards, I don't know if you were in his post-game press conference, Bill, but he showed up with a Mr. T dangle earring that I thought was pretty great. Also, a basketball. for reasons surpassing understanding.
He flew from Dallas with that basketball, though. He had it on the plane.
Sure.
He had it during his tunnel walk to the locker room pregame, and now he has a postgame. That's his buddy.
It didn't.
It's like Wilson.
It didn't work out great for him. He might need to figure out a new buddy. All right, we got to take a break, and then we're going to talk about. Ashley mentioned what adjustments the Mavs can make. We'll get into that, and we didn't even talk about yet one of the main storylines from last night: the return of Kristaps Porzingis. So we're going to do that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill on a Friday. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network. You can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, leave us a review. It helps people find us. All right, we got to get into Kristaps Porzingis. He was awesome last night. He had missed, a month and a half. Everybody was like, how's he going to look? Is he going to be in shape? 20 points in 21 minutes. And he came off the bench just the second time in his career that he did that. And he said he was cool with it. And he talked about his return after the game last night.
Obviously, what helped me was just even from the walkout before the game and then getting on the court, getting that kind of support was unreal, and the adrenaline was pumping through my veins, and that definitely helped. Obviously, it wasn't ideal that I was out for such a long time, but I did everything I could to prepare mentally for this moment coming back, and it paid off, and we got the job done tonight and had a good game and happy about the result.
Ash, that was a big return for Kristaps. Getting him back to the Celtics, that's a big boon for them because what he does, look, I'm a big fan of the Mavs' two big guys in Gafford and Lively, but I don't know that they're great matchups for defending him because a lot of the time they're playing 5 out and he's shooting threes, and they're not as good when they're taken away from the rim. But this is a big get for getting him back.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, as a Knicks fan, I just want to say it must be nice to have a healthy Porzingis. I don't know what that's like. So congratulations to Boston. You got a good version of him. Listen, he was huge, especially in that first half. I mean, he took advantage of the mismatches. He was great offensively. He was great defensively. I mean, you talk about what he was doing on the boards. You talk about what he was doing in terms of blocks. You talk about that rim protection. You talk about what he's doing on the perimeter. And it also helped to really soften the blow of Jason Tatum kind of going missing, right? And one thing I said when we were previewing this series all day yesterday here at CBS was that if you get a healthy Porzingis, and you didn't know how healthy he was until he got out there and you tested him and you failed because he looked great. So there's that. One thing that was really going to be beneficial to the Boston Celtics was in the series, in the games where Jason Tatum goes missing, you're not going to feel it as much because you have a guy that can give you 20 plus on a good night and more on a great night. And that's exactly what happened. Jason Tatum's 16 points and the lack thereof additional points were not felt at all because of just how dominant Porzingis was in that first half specifically, and honestly throughout the entire game. And that's what makes the Celtics so scary, John, to your point earlier, is that there's always that next man up, and that next man up is really, really good. And when we talk about this next man up, Porzingis is exceptional when he is healthy, and we saw that last night. So again, I'm interested to see, though, and Bill, maybe you can speak to this a little more, because I always wonder when guys miss so much time, and you heard Porzingis saying the sound, he's running on adrenaline and he was ready to get out there and mentally he prepared himself. That's great game one, but I wonder when the fatigue and the impact of the game start to wear on your body a little bit. I always wonder what that's like because you don't know what that feels like until you're in it. And I always wonder what game two versions of guys who have missed so much time look like when they're coming off such a long injury like that.
Yeah, and you're right. He talked about the adrenaline, which is why I think everything you said, both of you, is spot on. I mean, I won't repeat it. His impact in every facet of the game and the way he affects things tactically, it's amazing. The thing that struck me sitting there basically courtside was the way, and I think this will last, Ash, whatever his health situation, hopefully he's healthy, is that he injected swagger directly into the vein of that Celtics team and that entire arena. It wasn't a close game. I thought you were going somewhere else with this.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it wasn't a close game. It wasn't a close game for much of the game. But at the very start, I can't 8-7 or 9-8. It was like, okay, maybe this will be kind of a back and forth game. And when Porzingis came in and started to hit those shots and looked like he couldn't miss and protect the rim, and even when he didn't have blocks, when you just sort of saw the hesitation from those Mavericks players offensively to even attack the rim, and there was a moment where Kyrie kind of went in and sort of backed out. It was, I wish you could have felt the arena and the sense of, oh my God, he's back. There was a.
You see the wink? You see the wink, Bill?
Oh yeah,
I
felt the wink. The people behind me, so at the Boston Garden, the media area, there's fans on top of me, and there were 5 of the drunkest fans I've ever been. Good for them. They must have had 18 Sam Adams each. And I think Porzingis' first 10 minutes of play sobered them all up. They were just so shocked that he was that good. So ask John, all the things we're going to talk about, he did. But I just think we've talked about the Mavs being shook and Kyrie being shook and the Mavs looking overmatched. All true. I know Boston was at home. I think Porzingis gave them some calmness. I think when he got out there and played like that, it was just this stabilizing effect where the Celtics players and certainly the arena thought, oh, we got this. For the moment he hit a couple shots, it was, we are going to be just fine because this guy's back on top of this team that got us here.
And not only did he hit a couple shots, I thought what was super encouraging, especially, in terms of the energy that you were talking about, that blow-by dunk that he had on Lively, when I was saying that I'm not sure that matchup is great for Lively and Gafford because the farther you drag them away from the rim, the easier it becomes for Kristaps Porzingis, either when he's shooting or in that instance blowing by Lively for a dunk. And then immediately on the very next play, he had a block at the other end. His energy was awesome. He looked like he would, he wasn't lumbering or anything like that. I thought it was incredible. By the way, while we're on the subject of Kristaps Porzingis, Ashley, you might be aware of this because you were a Knicks fan. Or you are a Knicks fan, and he used to play for them.
I was like, are you guys aware of when did I change teams?
The two, not one, but 2 Kristaps Porzingis rap songs. Do you guys know about these?
I did not know that.
Do I want to know about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to know about this. So I tried to get the cuts to play for you guys, but the lawyers told us that's not a good idea because we don't have the rights to these things. But our producer, Aaron, is a hip-hop fan, so he's watching right now. I highly encourage you two and Aaron and all of our listeners and viewers to go and Google the words Kristaps Porzingis rap song, because there's 2 of them, and they're Latvian. They're 2 different Latvian rappers who have Kristaps Porzingis based rap songs, and one of the hooks is Kristaps Porzingis just over and over again, and there's a shout out to Carmelo Anthony. Highly recommend it. It's fantastic.
You should rap it in the way that it's so maybe I can get the whole gist. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you give us a little?
Can you give us a little something? Because I'm not really getting the energy in the way that you just told that story.
I'm not either.
Mayron was trying to get me to sing this, but it's basically like Kristaps Porzingis.
Okay.
And they just do that over and over again. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, you totally missed your calling, John.
John Gonzalez.
Take the act on the road.
I could have been a Latvian rapper. It could have been me. All right, let's talk about coaching adjustments here. Aside from playing the Kristaps Porzingis rap songs, I'm sure Jason Kidd's got to make some adjustments here. And I think for me, Kenny Smith actually mentioned this in the postgame last night on NBA TV, and I thought it was really good. Slowing down the game. If they're going to play a ton of possessions, you're giving the Celtics more opportunities to jack up threes. You're in a lot of trouble. This is an ISO heavy team anyway. They only had 9 assists last night. Luka only had 1.
That's the key.
Yeah, so you got to slow it down, play more half court, and you got to figure out a way to run them off the 3-point line because they're killing you out there. Those are the 2 that I was thinking of.
So I agree. I'll say this. I think counterintuitively, slow it down, but I want Luka. Luka regressed to the worst version of himself, I think, in that game. That version that I had worried about heading into the playoffs, high usage rate. He has the 20th highest usage rate in NBA history this past regular season. He dominated the ball. And it's a chicken and the egg thing. And I was thinking about this morning because there's the 1 assist that he had. There's the 9 assists that the Mavs had. They did not move the ball at all. In fact, this year, the Mavs were tied with the Clippers for the fewest passes per game at 240, right? 240 passes per game, bad. They had 203 passes yesterday. You're talking anemic ball movement. And I wanted to come on here, Ash and John, and blame Luka, but some of it might just be the credit to Boston's defense, that they were so stifling and they took away everybody. And Kyrie, as we've talked about, wasn't able to get it going. Maybe Luka just panicked and or did not have a choice. But Luka hero ball, what was he, 12 of 26 and 4 for 12 on 3? I know he carried that team as best he could. And I know that he had 10 critical points in the third quarter where they almost got it. They got it to 8 or 9 and almost got it to 6. But John, the adjustment for me is you got to go back to the offense you had that got you here in the regular season or the postseason, where you move the ball, where Luka got into the offense a little more quickly. Where he's a big part of the offense, but he got easy buckets for other guys. He got other guys comfortable. Some of that's about Kyrie, and I know you're playing the Boston Celtics, and that defense makes it hard. But Luka hero ball, it does not work. It has never worked historically. And whether it's panic or a response to what the Boston Celtics did, they got to go back to moving that basketball and including every single one of those 5 guys that are on the floor on offense.
Bill, I'm going to, piggyback off of your point here. In order for Luka to do what Luka needs to do well, there needs to be someone to alleviate some of that pressure, and that person is Kyrie, right? You have Kyrie Irving. He missed all 5 of his three-point attempts, and not only that, missing wide-open shots. And when he was able to shake his defenders, he wasn't able to finish with making any of his shots. So you have Luka. The Celtics basically made him one-dimensional and took away the thing that makes him so special. Outside of the scores and outside of the points that he can score, what makes him so special is his ability to assist and dish out that ball to everybody else on the floor. When we were talking about that Timberwolves series, we kept talking about not just how many points he was putting up, but also the assists. In one game, he had 11 of them. He was getting everybody involved with that offense, and it made it very hard for the Timberwolves to figure out, who do I have to guard? Because everybody's touching this ball, and everyone's getting involved with this offense, and everyone's making their shots. The Celtics completely stripped that away from them, and in part, that's due to Kyrie not doing what he needed to do as the Robin to his Batman, or whoever you want. Well, yeah, Luka's Batman. I feel like that's obvious. So you have to get Kyrie involved in order to allow Luka to do what he does well. Because those two, when they're playing well together, whether it's Kyrie's just all defense in the first half and then his offense picks up in the second, or vice versa, they're a direct correlation to how the rest of that offense functions. One domino falls, they all fall. And that's exactly what we saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, getting Kyrie unlocked is huge, because if they don't, they're dead in the water. But then I look at it and I go, all right, he's got it really tough, because they're throwing Drew Holiday at him. They're throwing Derek White at him. In a pinch, they've got Jaylen Brown in the switch, right? Like, he doesn't have, there's nobody that he's going to face in this entire series where he can go, oh, yeah, you know what? Now I get a little bit of a break here with the defender that they threw at me, because it's brutal the way that the Celtics can come at you. Also, I just remembered another Kristaps Porzingis line. They tell you to keep calm like Kristaps Porzingis, so maybe the Mavs need to do that as well. I'm telling you, go
is
and
that
check
a
out
thing?
this song. It's really great.
Keep calm, like, is that a thing? Keep calm, like Kristaps Porzingis?
Listen, it's just too good. I've got it stuck in my head because I was watching it before the show in preparation for this, and it's really outstanding. I'm so broken up about not being able to play this for you guys.
I do remember when he was a Knick and we coined him the unicorn. There were a bunch of New York rappers that like had some like phrases like, but they didn't say Porzingis. It was like the unicorn, but everyone knew who they were talking about because it was like related to basketball. But I don't think there was ever.
Terrible.
This is better.
Yeah, it was like no.
This is better than any of that.
It was like a bar. It wasn't even a whole song. It was like a line in a song.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
This is better than any of that. Go check it out. All right, we're going to take another quick break. And then on the other side, Adam Silver had his annual finals press conference. We're going to get into him discussing expansion and then potentially losing inside the NBA. That's coming up right here on Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You can also check us out on our YouTube page. You can find that over at Beyond the Arc CBS. You can subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. We have some fun polls up there. They chop up the show, all kinds of good stuff over there. All right, so Adam Silver every year before the finals begin has an annual press conference, and he talked about all kinds of things yesterday, including the fact that now that they've got the media rights deal almost wrapped up, that means that they can turn to their next piece of business, which is expansion.
But by turning to expansion, it doesn't mean that we're going to announce that now we're ready to add teams. It means that there'll be a committee of NBA governors that will focus on it. There's clearly markets out there that are very interested, and we'll run through a process. But I actually am looking forward to that. I think that the league, it's not preordained that we will expand this time, but I know there's an enormous amount of interest out there. And to me, yes, there are wealthy individuals, institutions that would like to invest and buy NBA teams, but I think it's on the league to look holistically, because there's the dilution, of course. Let's just say we expand by 2 teams. What does that mean for talent? I feel great about where the talent is right now in the league, but those players have to come from somewhere. If you add 2 teams, how does it work geographically? What will it mean for growing the game? At some point, we'd like to look outside the United States in addition to Canada. This may not be the right moment to do that, but I'm thinking long-term as well. So I'm actually very excited about turning to that process, but first we just got to be finished with the media deal.
Bill, you were there. It sounded to me like he was kind of hedging a little bit, but this has been the worst kept secret in the NBA forever. Everybody expects that they're going to expand. Everybody expects that the 2 cities are going to be Seattle and Vegas, although he did mention Canada, which I thought was interesting. Is this just Adam being typically cautious and that we're going to get there eventually, or what do you think is going to happen?
Canada where?
I heard it differently.
Good question.
Maybe because I've gone to a bunch of these, and he usually shoots this question down, and he's pretty loquacious, right? He's very. These things are interesting because he'll engage.
Yeah.
This is the first time he's given more than a 10-second answer, and so what I thought I heard was, "Oh, it's coming." And I think the point he made about Canada is more, look, we know we have Canada, but we want to look to Europe. I don't think it was a wink to more Canadian teams. I think it was, we have teams in the U.S., and we're not forgetting you, Toronto. We love you, everybody north of the border. My takeaway is this is real now, that they're going to make so much money, obviously, in the new rights deals, wherever that goes, that whether it's a couple years from now where they announce here's the plan, or if they do decide, and he sort of hit on this, and I know there's a big push in the league office for this, they want to go to Europe. Maybe that's, I don't know what their timeline is. I'm guessing here. I haven't talked to them. Maybe it's 5 years or 10 years down the line, but I think it's coming, and I think it's worth noting, if you have expansion, you're going to cut checks, huge checks, to current NBA owners, right? Here's 50 million, here's 60 million. That's a really interesting thing to keep an eye on with the dilemma that is going on with the Timberwolves, which Silver didn't really want to weigh in on, because if you're battling over who controls the team, and now you think whoever has it's going to get $60 million in 2 years or 5 years or 7 years because expansion feels like it's a lock, that also complicates that. But yeah, a lot to unpack. I think expansion's coming. That's what I heard, and I think the question is now just a matter of where is it, and based on where it is, will I think dictate how long it takes.
I think Europe would be
Ashley,
insane.
you don't want Canada?
Well, you know how I feel about Canada. It's an extension of the U.S. You just need a passport to get there.
You can't say that.
It is.
It's my favorite Ashley
I'll say this. Hold on. I'll say this. Let me rephrase. Toronto is an extension of the U.S. and you just need a passport to get there. It's a little bit more red tape to get to the U.S. And get from Canada. But listen, Ryan Reynolds might as well be Canadian to me. You know what I mean? American to me.
He is Canadian.
I'm saying he might as well be American to me. I don't look at him and say, oh, he's Canadian. I just see him as Ryan Reynolds, the American actor. But
why do you hate Canada the way I hate Minnesota?
I don't. I just think that Canada is essentially America with better health care and more expensive taxes. I don't know why we even need a passport to get there. It's just ridiculous. But that's a different show. Listen, to your point, though, John, Vegas, Seattle, we know that. The conversations about Europe, though, are weird to me, right? Because there's a drastic time difference. I don't even know how that would work logistically in terms of the course of a season. You play 82 games in the NBA. Making that trip back and forth would be extremely difficult unless you're going to go ahead and build a mini league out there. So if you make that trip to Europe, you're playing essentially 5 teams on that trip. But then again, how would it work in reverse? You know what I mean? Because then you would again go ahead and take, say, one European team. You'd have to essentially have them in the States for months in order for it to make worth their while. Otherwise, that 6-hour, 8-hour, 7-hour, depending on where you are in Europe, flight would be crazy to do that. There's no way you can do that on a daily basis. It would be a very difficult thing logistically to figure out with a European team or teams when playing U.S. basketball.
I had this conversation with a league office guy, I don't know, sometime in the last couple of visits, so in the last year. And John's right, and you're right, Ashley. They don't know, but it's probably a mini league, and you have some sort of balanced schedule where I'm just making this up, but we talk 4 teams, right? The team in London, Germany, somewhere in Spain, and I don't know, maybe Paris.
France.
So it's France, right. Paris, Berlin, Barcelona, Madrid, and London. They play each other a lot. There's some sort of balanced schedule where teams come over and they do the little circuit of 4, and then if you're one of the teams in Europe, you go over and you do a big circuit, and then one of those teams make the Eastern Conference or however they do it playoffs.
That's so much. That's so much to deal with.
It's coming, though. It's coming to the NFL. I think baseball's too far behind, but maybe it's a 30. I think the question is it 30 years or is it 7 to 10 years? But they think there's so much money because when they look at soccer. And the thing about this that I think is really interesting is Adam Silver has used soccer as a model for how he thinks he can grow the game. And to be fair, David Stern also looked at the international talent pool that has obviously become a huge part of the NBA, the in-season tournament. Those things are largely inspired by what they see as the money that was available to international soccer that the NBA wants to cut into. And those things have worked. They've made the game international check. And I think the in-season tournament worked, but more importantly, Adam Silver thinks it worked. So this is the next step in the internationalization based on, I think, the soccer model they aspire to. It's coming.
For me, it would make more sense to expand the amount of Euro games that are played, right? So, like you have, I think, Berlin. I think they just did Paris this year. It makes more sense to expand the amount of games that NBA teams go over and to expand the game of basketball within the European space. It makes more sense to visit more countries, and maybe just like the in-season tournament, maybe you have the European tournament, but it's within the teams that are already in existence, and then if you expand it to Seattle, Vegas, and include those teams as well. But developing a mini league with 4 or 5 teams and then logistically figuring out how to make that work with the time difference, the flight, that would, to me, just seem so chaotic when all you can do is maybe have, over the course of 3 weeks, certain teams like they do with the NFL go and play the London games or the Berlin games, and then that becomes like the Euro in-season tournament or something like that. I just think that creating a mini league just seems like a lot of moving pieces, but I could be wrong.
Money.
That too.
It's all about money. That's all that matters. They look at that and go, it's a cash cow, and if they can get more money out of it, they will. And that's the reason why we're going to throw this other bite here from Adam Silver as well, where this new media rights deal, all of us are like, man, this sucks. We don't get inside the NBA anymore. They don't care because they're getting so much money out of it. They're willing to kill off the show. But Adam Silver was asked about this at yesterday's press conference. Here's what he said.
It has been difficult. That show in particular is special. And I have a close relationship with everyone who's on that show from the time they played in the league as well. And Ernie and I have been friends forever. At the same time, it's not just the talent, of course. And you've been in production yourself. I mean, there's hundreds of people who are involved with, what I still refer to as Turner Sports, who have been longtime friends and colleagues, and no different at the other networks. And it's on one hand, from the league standpoint, it's fantastic to be liked and to be wanted and to have multiple suitors. At the same time, it makes me uncomfortable that it's zero sum, that at the end of the day, there's only going to be so many television packages, there's only so many finals games and playoff games and regular season games to distribute. So I will say directly from me, directly to your question, and the people who seem to be most impacted right now, and the folks at Turner Sports, is I apologize that this has been a prolonged process.
I mean,
he apologizes, and yet that's not going to change anything because the show's going away. Last night after the game, they had Shaq and Kenny on NBA TV. Not the same. It was a bummer.
Well, I do want to say
I didn't see it
quickly before we dive into this. There was a report yesterday that came out. Various media entities within the space reported this, that TNT is currently negotiating a way to still secure NBA media rights. It may be a smaller, less expensive fourth package that could include regular season and some playoff games. Another scenario could possibly be for the NBA to slice off a package of locally televised games from teams and turn them into national games for TNT. So they are still somewhat at the negotiating table trying to hold on to any remnants of inside the NBA, but it definitely is going to change form drastically after 2025.
Yeah, I mean, Ash is right. But that best case scenario is a small piece, but there are certainly people here who think it's just the NBA posturing that they tried and it didn't work out. I don't know what's going to happen, but to me, Adam Silver sounded like the really nice homecoming queen who's turning down the dude who drives the Prius who's in the friend zone. You're really sweet and great, but
why
I'm going
the Prius catch shade?
I drive a Prius for a long time, so it felt like it fit.
He as
Economically
politely
friendly?
as possible, as
Sure.
sensitively as possible, just tried to say it's over and we're moving on and we wish you Godspeed. But yeah, last night on NBA TV, it just wasn't the same thing because you only had the two of them and Ernie wasn't on and Charles wasn't there and it was like I appreciate them throwing them on, but it just wasn't the same deal.
It is interesting, though, real quick, though, that if they are, plucked from different networks at some point, right, that changes the chemistry of the show if they're not all together. And also different networks have different rules on what you can and cannot do. And as we know, Turner has been very lenient with Inside the NBA. Yep. So the show as we know it after next year is definitely going to change in some way, shape, or form. So
end of an era for sure. On the other side, we're going to discuss another broadcasting note from last night. Doris Burke made history. We'll get into that on Beyond the Arc. This is CBS Sports Network. Thanks, Tommy. All right, wrapping up Beyond the Arc. Game 2 on Sunday in Boston. Celtics -7.5 in that one. Now heavy favorites. The Celtics are heavy favorites at -425. Ash, which way are you going in Game 2?
I'm going Mavericks. We're going to a different team in Game 2. They're going to bounce back. We've never seen them kind of fall the way that we've seen them fall in Game 1 and Games 2. I'm sticking with that. Mavericks all day, every day. Kyrie, show up for me. Prove me right, baby.
Mavs in 5 is still possible, even if it remains stupid. So I'm going to go Mavs in Game 2. And I will say this, 2012 NBA Finals, Heat lose the first game against the Thunder. Everybody says, oh, the Thunder. And then it turns around. Is that happening here, John? No, but I'm going to pretend right now in this moment that it can.
Yeah, if you're getting Mavs in 5 prediction, you really need them to show up on this. I'm rooting for you, but I'm taking the Celtics in Game 2. I think it's a tall order for them. All right, that's going to be it for us. We're back at it on Monday right here on CBS Sports Network. But for now, for our NBA insider Bill Ryder, for Ashley Nicole Moss in our Florida studios, I'm John Gonzalez. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend and enjoy Game 2.